Hi, I'm Thomas Mills with the Politics NC podcast. We're back with another episode of Restless Natives. And as usual, we have Anderson Clayton, chair of the North Carolina Democratic Party. And we have Travis Fain, a former journalist who has covered North Carolina for years and has always got sharp insight. Guys, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
So, I think we need to start this week with the budget. The House passed a budget this week, and it had some good things in it and some bad things in it. To me, what was most interesting was Democrats basically supported it. And Travis, as the reporter on the call, why don't you start with a little bit of background on what happened?
Yeah, we had two budgets pass this week because the U.S. House passed a budget too, but we're
That's
talking
true.
Here about the state budget, which was, I think it got 93 votes. I believe a majority or close to it of the Democratic Party backed it.
I think so, yeah.
I don't know that I've ever seen a vote that bipartisan on something that significant. Now, Democrats voting for the House budget as opposed to the Senate budget, which is much more austere, less money for teachers, less money for raises, stuff like that, has a number of differences between the House budget. So Democrats voting for the House Republican budget as opposed to the Senate Republican budget is not the same thing as Democrats voting for the final budget negotiated between the House and Senate. You could definitely see that change. But I mean, it either helps House Republicans negotiate with the Senate or it hurts them because, for some reason we've decided if something is bipartisan, then the party in power has sold out its values. I think it's ridiculous. I think every North Carolinian should be happy to see bipartisan votes, particularly on something as important as the state budget.
Yeah, I saw comments from both sides. I saw both sides accusing their own side of selling out. I saw Senate Republicans complaining that if Democrats voted for the budget, the House budget must be pretty bad. I saw Democrats complaining that if Democrats voted for a Republican budget, they must have given up their values. And really, I don't think any of that is true. We're still a long way from coming up with whatever budget we look at. But what I found interesting was Josh Stein went over there. He talked to the House Democrats. I don't think he loved the budget. I also think he thought, well, the House version is a lot better than the Senate version. And I would rather see our teachers get, I think it's 8% pay raise in the House budget versus the, 3 or 4% raise in the Senate budget. I'll take the lesser of two evils and maybe try to get something else out of it by shoring up the House Republicans. You think that's fair?
Yeah, Anderson, what's the mood among Democrats? I'm sure your phone blows up on every issue every day, but in what manner has it blown up on this?
I mean, I think that what we saw were Democrats actually trying to make sure that people are blaming the right folks for what's going to come out of this. Republicans have had control over this state for the last decade, and when they got in control in 2010, the immediate teacher cuts in their pay that they gave to them, they've slowly but surely over the last several years been trying to raise it back up to where it once was under Democrats. And I think setting the stage here for people and saying, you're not really getting any more than what you used to under Democratic control in this, but yeah, we'd like to see, to Thomas's points, them actually give public educators the raises that we need to see right now. And if that means that we need to put Republicans in a room with each other and let them brawl it out until they figure out how in the hell they're actually going to serve the people of North Carolina, I mean, I think that's what Democrats did. And they said, we're not actually the ones that we want you to be arguing with here. It's not Republican versus Democrat on this. It's Republican versus Republican. And how are y'all two going to actually come to a conclusion on what's the best way and the pathway forward for this state? Which clues in here they don't actually have. Both of these budgets eliminated the corporate income tax. Both of these budgets do not have an actual way to help North Carolina fiscally, in my opinion, in the future, be able to sustain itself, and also the growth in population that we have coming to the state. But I guess that's a problem to kick the can down the road again, which is what Republicans seem to be doing with this, is making the problem of the future, or making the problem of the now the problem of the future. And I think that it's a disgrace to people in North Carolina and future people in North Carolina that wanted to be able to call this state home for the rest of their lives.
Well, the good news, though, Anderson, is that you got a potential ally in the Club for Growth. is a pretty right-wing group who basically never met a tax cut they didn't just love, whether it was responsible or not, and has said, just went on record saying every House Republican who voted for the House budget should be primary. They should lose their seats. I have never heard of an organization say, all 66 people. The only other entity that I can think of that wants every House Republican to fear for its political life, other than the Club for Growth right now, is the Democratic Party and its aligned, groups that are aligned with it. It's absolutely amazing to me. I doubt that any of that really comes to fruition. I imagine Club for Growth backs down. I imagine there was pressure from Senate leadership, Republican Senate leadership, trying to use the Club for Growth as a cudgel to hit the House Republicans, to argue that the Senate budget is more conservative. But my goodness, to just go on record saying that every House Republican doesn't deserve to be in office. Like, they're making your argument, Anderson. Congratulations.
I mean, that's you just made my. I was sitting there listening to Travis earlier, and I was like, "Yeah, Travis, tell him." Like, I think that we've got to play smarter than what we're doing, than what we have done in previous cycles, right? And that's being able to actually paint the picture for people about who's to blame for the problems that are in your life right now. And Republicans have done a fairly good job, I think, at pointing the finger at Democrats and saying, "No, it's them that are causing these issues." And I'm like, actually, right now, the only people that are in this room are y'all two. It's Republican or Republican. It's House and Senate. And they control everything in this state right now. They've stripped enough power away from my governor over the last, I would say, 10 years. So, yeah.
Well, and you can't just take L's for no reason. You can't take losses for no reason. Which is why I kind of chafe against the idea that, Democrats shouldn't have voted for this budget. Well, they like things in it, that's fine. I mean, everybody's got to vote. And they can decide their conscience. But, nobody on the Democratic side needs to have some knee-jerk reaction against Democrats who voted for this version of this budget at this moment in time, which is not all the moments in time.
And this is the thing I hope my Democrats out there can trust, is that I'll tell you when it's time to freak out. Like, I don't think, and everybody in this state that knows me, I don't think I'm shy about getting angry and getting unsatisfied with what is happening on the Republican side of things or in our own party in that sense. I hope that people will know when it's time to get angry, I'll let you know, and we'll be out there with you doing it.
Right, and it looks like Democrats just spurred a Republican food fight between the Senate and House, Senate Republicans and House Republicans. So
don't they already say that though? Isn't it like the House is the what is that saying, Travis, about like the lunchroom and
the other party is the opposition, the other chamber is the enemy, something like that. That's the
yeah.
Saying. Yeah.
I know. I was going of like the House is when you're in the House, you're in the lunchroom. When you're in the Senate, you're in the classroom or something like that. I feel like that is the framing that I've always heard about our legislature. So it'll be interesting to see, I think.
Right. Well, one thing I think it's interesting watching these two new leaders operate. You've got Josh Stein as a governor. This is his first budget. You got Destin Hall as a speaker, and both of them have a little bit different temperament. I mean, I wrote a piece today. It's kind of like the Senate is still governed by the revolutionaries who took control of the legislature in 2011. And Hall is kind of the second generation of them. He was not there, I don't think, when they got elected in 2011.
He's always been in the majority. He's always been in power.
Right. It reminds me a little bit of what happened in South Carolina with their legislature. They came in with a bunch of, when Republicans took control of the South Carolina legislature, they started doing all this draconian stuff. And then over time, they kind of moderated, and a lot of the fights within the South Carolina legislature was less between Democrats and Republicans, and it was more between moderates and conservatives. And I think maybe that's what you're starting to see evolve here in North Carolina. I think maybe it's time for Phil Berger to take a rest. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, I certainly think so, but I'm a little biased over here, I think, on that.
I ain't putting money against Phil Berger.
Well,
people can talk to me all day long about how popular or unpopular he may be in his home district. I have talked to that man too many times and thought, I am definitely not the smartest person in this conversation. Phil Berger is. So, indeed, somebody is going to, he's not going to go willingly. I know he's got a significant primary this time out. And there may have been some missteps of strategy of the last couple of years. At least I would argue there have been. But yeah, I ain't counting that guy out.
No, someone said it to me earlier today. They were talking about how like Destin Hall doesn't have the same viciousness because he's not been in the minority or in the super minority, and Phil Berger has been both a minority leader and now a majority leader, and what that does to somebody. And I was like, yeah, I think I'd feel that vindictive, to be honest with you, when I got back into a position of power after you see like someone else do something to you over and over again. And I feel like that's what Republicans and Democrats are going through right now, is that Democrats are seeing that when Republicans hold power in the state, they're willing to do absolutely anything in order to keep it. And it's wild to me to be able to see what Phil Berger has been able to do, being somebody that most North Carolinians, right, don't know the name of this man, but he is the most powerful person in the entire state. And it's just interesting, I think, when you think about that.
Yeah, and it's not just Berger, though. It's like Ralph Hayes has been there since the beginning, too. So it's kind of like the most powerful people in the Senate really came out of that, what I call the North Carolina Republican Revolution, when they took power in 2011.
I'll be honest with you, in my head, I went to that point of where Travis looked at me on this first part. He was like, you really want to make it that serious of an example here, Anderson? You might want to be careful on that. And then I was like, honestly, it feels like that to me too, though, Thomas, genuinely.
Yeah. Well, I will say this about Berger. My understanding from people in Rockingham County is his opponent is a former sheriff who was incredibly popular throughout his tenure. And he may be more popular than Berger. And, at some point, people have a shelf life in politics for the most part. And when you hold power for too long, people get tired of it. And that may be happening. I mean, the interesting thing is Berger may be more popular among Republicans across the state than he is among Republicans in his own district.
That may be
That's
right.
because...
Let me correct you. Sam Page is still sheriff of Rockingham.
Oh, he's still sheriff. Okay, I thought he was
sheriff.
former. Okay.
And you may be right about Berger being more popular statewide, particularly among Republicans, than in Rockingham County. Berger's son is a county commissioner there. Almost lost his county commission race this last time out, largely over the casino issue, which we don't have to delve into. But I mean, Berger kind of pushed hard to get a casino built in Rockingham County. It kind of fell apart at the end there. So sorry, Anderson, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, it's exactly what I was going to say. I was like, maybe you shouldn't try to force something on your own constituents that they didn't desire in the first place, which is what I think you're going to see from Tom Tillis this next year as well, is that the fact of him taking away healthcare access for people across the state of North Carolina is not going to bode so well for you when you have to go back up for re-election in a state like this.
That's right. As Travis mentioned, we just had the federal budget was also passed this week, and there are going to be repercussions from that. I mean, in particular, they're going to cut a lot of Medicaid, and a lot of people are going to lose insurance. North Carolina is a state that just passed it a couple of years ago, and I think it was very popular. I mean, one reason the Republicans passed it after Democrats urged them to for so long is because it became a liability not to support it. So how do you think that affects Tillis going forward? I mean, is he gonna support a budget that kicks a whole bunch of people off of Medicaid?
I mean, I think we're about to see, but I'm hoping that everybody is also calling Tom Tillis's office right now, that they're advocating against this and also helping other people who are on Medicaid and SNAP benefits tell their stories, because I just think that we're going to see whether or not he can be tested in this way.
Yeah, I mean, he's in the position he is so often finds himself in, where he's kind of damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. Not that I have a lot of sympathy for him, but if he doesn't toe the line for the president, he gets hammered. And maybe even the president pushes for someone else to primary him and backs someone else in the primary, whereas he kind of has to sacrifice his own values to go the other way. It's not just Medicaid. It's not just SNAP benefits. There's all sorts of stuff in this bill, including the repeal of all these tax credits for clean energy projects that are in the Inflation Reduction Act. And I mean, North Carolina has really retooled a pretty significant portion of its economy for kind of the next gen manufacturing. Think the Toyota battery plant out near Greensboro. All these major projects, and North Carolina is not the only state, not the only Republican represented state that has done that. This is big job impact from this House budget bill. And Tillis is one of 4 United States senators who's already been on record saying, look, we don't need to repeal these tax credits, which the president has called for the repeal of. He's been pretty full-throated about that. The House Republicans are doing it. I'm amazed. How in the world have House Republicans, federal House Republicans, managed to craft a bill that cuts spending, federal spending for food SNAP, which is food stamps for children, feeds fewer children. It would kick people off their government paid health care. It would undo all these tax credits that are helping to reshape our economy and creating jobs, actively creating jobs. How did they manage to do all that? And also it raises the federal deficit by $4 trillion and makes the debt problem that they've been pretending to care about even worse. How is that even possible? How do you jettison all these important things, but also we're still going to take in way less money than we spend? What's the purpose of that?
Kind of reminds you of the 2017 when Trump first took office and they made that huge tax cut that really, they argued, helped everybody, but nobody really felt it unless you were very wealthy, and it exploded the deficit, and they paid a price for it in 2018. I mean, part of the reason they had such a rough cycle in 2018 was because of that bill, and they just basically passed the same thing with even more cuts. You know, I mean, since that 2017 bill, a lot of states have seen Medicaid expansion, and I wonder, you know, how much does this bill end up playing? There's so much going on right now, but how much does this particular bill end up playing in the 2026 midterms?
I mean, I think pretty significant, especially when you're looking at people that are losing their livelihoods. 1.6 million children in North Carolina are on Medicaid right now. And I think that you're looking at that's what I keep telling folks. And when honestly, Democrats look at me every day and they're like, I cannot believe that people are not madder about what's happening right now in the Trump administration. And I'm like, it has not hit the average American yet. And I know that is hard for people who are so angry right now to believe, because they've lost their jobs. I was talking to one of our county party chairs yesterday who actually used to work for USAID, and she lost her job throughout all of this, and so she's somebody now who got involved with our party because of that at the end of the day. So I guess thank you, Donald Trump, at the end of that one. But the other aspect of that, I feel like, is just most people don't understand how much these cuts are really going to hit the people across this state. But we have got to be there to educate around it, because I already see ads right now from the Trump campaign priming people about saying, you need to blame Joe Biden for this. This was something that the Biden administration has done. And to be honest with you all, like I get more and more concerned about the media landscape that Republicans have put into play to push propaganda, and also the misinformation that they have right now to be able to make people not understand who is actually to blame at the end of this, which is also why I think the strategy that my Democrats right now in the state legislature are using is important, because people need to know who's at fault. And I hate to be like, we need to know who's at blame, but it is important for people to understand that at the end of the day, to know who they're voting against in that sense, but also who they're voting for.
Importantly, though, Anderson, I can't give anyone chapter and verse on this, nor am I going to go do the research to do it later. But there's a bunch of staggered impact, different dates built into the federal budget bill that passed the House, to where some of these cuts don't happen before the next election. So people may not see the impact of certain things. And there's been enough negotiated on this bill over the last week or so that I don't remember where various dates landed, but you may not see the impact before the 2026 elections. And, you know, that would, of course, be purposeful should that come to pass in that manner.
Well, I think we're going to see a lot of pain start. There was a conference that the John Locke Foundation sponsored earlier this week that was a kind of business roundtable, And I read a analysis of it, and what they were saying is these were business people saying, we haven't felt the impact of the tariffs yet. And I think it's the same way with the Medicaid. Right now we're seeing them pass bad legislation or make bad rulings, but we really haven't seen the impact of it. And I think, Walmart came out and announced last week that they were going to be raising prices because of the tariffs. And somebody said that Walmart gave cover to a whole bunch of small businesses to raise prices too. So those prices are, if they've been raised yet, they haven't really been felt. And I think you're going to see a lot of prices start to shoot up. Trump comes out this morning and says he's going to put 50% tariff on the EU. This is going to have an economic impact. And all we've done right now is know that it's happening. We haven't felt the impact of it. And I think at some point, it just starts to build up. You're getting higher prices, you're getting fewer goods, and then all of a sudden you start to see people losing their health care. At some point, the blame gets put on the party in the White House every time. And back a little bit, circle back on that, the House budget, the State House budget that Democrats, kind of voted for. It really doesn't matter. Republicans own everything right now. So no matter what that budget does, whatever Democrats do in the House is almost irrelevant because people vote on how it impacts them. And if we start seeing bad stuff come out of that budget, people are going to blame Republicans. They're not going to blame Democrats in 2026, probably not 2028, unless Republicans lose both the House and the Senate in Washington. So, we're still a ways from feeling the impact of a lot of these policies.
You mentioned the Walmart price increases. The president came out and said, hey, Walmart should absorb this. They should not raise these prices. It should be Walmart in China that essentially take those hits. And it made me think back about over the years, whenever we have economic trouble, I think about the pandemic, right? During the pandemic and post-pandemic, wages really increased, which is a good thing. But it didn't really come out of corporate profit margins, those increases. It was all just got passed along. And so a serious question that I have in my mind is, when was the last time in this country when the rich, when the major corporations, when they took one for the team? When they said, all right, our profit margin is going to go down a percentage point or two, but we're not going to pass this cost along. And I cannot think of a time when that sort of, we have a real problem with our federal deficit and our federal debt. And yields are going up in the bond market. That's only going to make that a more difficult, more pressing problem. And we need somebody to kind of foot the bill a little bit here, and just nobody steps up. The rich in this country have not stepped up, and boy, that would be, it's easy for me to say that sitting here somewhere in the middle class. I guess it ain't my money, and that's probably the argument against it. But where you at? Where you at, upper class? Save us! Come on. Right?
Yeah. Hold your breath on that.
I don't know. We do need a government that wants to be able to tax them, because I don't think they're going to pay it without being asked to. You know what I mean, Travis? Like that's the reality here. Is like you actually have to have people that want to be able to hold the 1% accountable, and we don't have a Congress right now that's willing to do that, or a president. We've got a president that I've never seen in my lifetime personally, the threat to corporations though, that and the power behind, or the assumed power right behind saying something like that. My jaw dropped open when I read it, of just like, wow, Donald Trump is really going to sit there and say, actually, I know for a fact that y'all were able to consume $1 billion in gross revenue last year. You can eat this tax, actually. And I'm going to be the messenger that goes out, and you should fear telling the American people who's actually to blame for this corporate greed at the end of the day. It was wild in some way to see the president of the United States stand up to corporations when it benefited his own policies. That's the lesson that I took from that, is that there was a way to do that quite frankly, I've never seen a Democratic president do before. And I also think there's a lesson to be owned there of like, actually, the bully pulpit is a position of power, and the power of the presidency does need to be utilized against corporations and the rich people that are taking advantage of the average American. And like, is Donald Trump doing it in a way that benefits the average American? No, he's doing it to move money from one billionaire to the other billionaire, his billionaires, right, that are helping fund his associations. But I'm like, there is a way to do this with a in my opinion, with a party that actually wants to stand up to and take on and say, no, let's talk about the profit margins. Let's talk. And people in our party, I feel like, are finally understanding that like there is a way to hold people more accountable than just saying, oh, but that they can do that because there is this system that allows them to. I don't know. I thought it was a very like, he's going to figure out a way to make this happen so that so that people don't blame him. And I'm like, why in the hell are we not that crafty sometimes in what we're doing? Like, I do wonder occasionally, you know, not to say I'm giving Republicans credit, because I get it's like the Democratic Party chair maybe shouldn't be saying this, but I'm like, it was a very compelling thing for somebody to say of like, there is somebody else to blame here, and I'm going to point the finger at you, and I have the power, the messaging tool right now to be able to go out there and get that out to people. It was wild.
Corporate greed is an underlying problem throughout this country.
Yeah.
It underlies so many of the inequities in this country, and it should be pointed out over and over again. One of my regrets as a reporter, you know, I was a reporter for 25 years, was that I did not prioritize quarterly earnings calls and listening to what companies were telling their shareholders, because it was quite often, look how much money we made, we're doing great, and that didn't necessarily match what they might tell the government or what they might say publicly. But I mean, it's right there. You just have to pay attention to it. And I would like to see in our media landscape, not that my former colleagues need one more thing to do, but to pay attention to how much money people are actually making, and not let them hide the ball and say, oh, well, it's this and it's that, and you're just not really understanding it. Nah, man, you're up here. It's clear that money is very real. So, you know, how did y'all turn me? How did I start?
I've been listening to this and I was like, oh my God. I said, Travis is like giving the Democratic perspective right now. I ain't even got to say nothing. Like,
I'm a moderate, just for the record.
Yeah. That lefty populist, Travis Fain over there.
We'll get you, Travis.
Lefty populist moderate, apparently.
You know, the thing that I think that whole Doge thing really exposed is that the problem here really is a revenue problem, not a spending problem. You know, they cut 200,000 jobs either through firing, layoffs, or forced or buyouts, and it really didn't affect the revenue. You know, we eliminated USAID almost completely. We got rid of a whole bunch of other programs, and at the end of the day, they still have a $3.7 trillion deficit with their budget. You know, and it's always been as much of, there may be some spending issues. There may be a reason we need to kind of get a hold on some of the costs of Medicare and Social Security. You know, defense might need to be more efficient. But at the end of the day, we've been cutting taxes since Ronald Reagan on the wealthy. And we've been trying to figure out how to pay for the budget without raising taxes on the middle class as we give larger and larger tax cuts to the wealthy. You can't shift that burden without causing pain or deficit. And the whole thing has been pain avoidance. Let's just keep borrowing money so it doesn't hurt anybody. And what we're really doing is we're hurting the next generation, because all of their money is going to go towards servicing the debt that we've built up. And, you know, at some point you're going to have to go after the rich and get the money back. And that's, you know, I have a theory. I'm going to drone on for just a quick second more, that a lot of the pain that we're feeling now that has created the anger within the country over the last decade is a result of two things. One is cutting taxes dramatically throughout the Reagan years for the very wealthy, and then having the whole free market thing, dropping all the tariffs, the free trade movement that took off in the 90s. Not only did we create a lot more income for very wealthy people, we also reduced the amount those people pay. And so the resentment here is we hollowed out certain portions of the country. You know, I see all these people talking about, well, wages went up during this time, and you know, our GDP grew, and all these national statistics. When in reality, if you came up in a place like Wadesboro, North Carolina, what you really watched was the textile industry evaporate in about 2 years' time, 3 years' time. People, you know, they lost money. At the same time, about that time, I'm moving into the Triangle, and it's booming, and we're making tons of money here and all that. But the reality is that all these people that were making wealth during these trades were paying less and less taxes. They should have been paying more for what they were getting. They should have been paying higher taxes as they were watching their income explode. If you go watch charts throughout the 80s and 90s, the amount of money that the top 1% has is just huge, and you know, the amount that the poorest people have is shrinking.
Yeah.
So
it's one of the great problems of not just this generation, but probably of all generations. But I think we're coming to a potential breaking point on wealth inequality. And I do think there are spending cuts that need to be made in the federal budget. I think a lot of them are in healthcare. You know, we're going to have to do something with Social Security at some point. We're going to have to cut our defense spending at some point. And there are probably good cuts within the rest of the budget too. But you just can't focus just on the one side of the ledger. You have to talk about taxes. We seem
right.
We're in this cycle of Democrats who spend money, and then Republicans come in and also spend money, but also cut taxes, and it's just as unsustainable as you've laid out.
Anderson, you got any last thoughts?
No, just that I've really enjoyed Travis making all my points for me today, honestly. It's been really fun. It's been a treat, truly.
You know what? When you're right, Anderson. I don't care where the ideas come from, but you know, I'm not going to allow people to, you know, sell me shit and call it Shinola. Is that still a saying? It used to be.
I always say, I'm like, you can't bullshit a bullshitter. You know, that's what rural North Carolina would say.
Right. Well, I really appreciate you guys coming on, and hope to see you in a couple more weeks. Until then, let's hope things get a little bit more normalized here, and let's look forward to jumping into summer as June rolls around. Y'all have a good day. I'll talk to you in a few weeks. Thank you for listening.